All right, well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the first session of the 2023 NEAC Summer PD Series. And I'm really impressed with how many devoted AP Chemistry teachers are here with us today. I'm Kristin Vanderveen, and I am currently the president of NEAC, and this is the second year that we've run this Summer PD Series. And I'm so pleased that we have Anthony Stetzenmeyer, formerly known as Anthony Tidaldi, and you might recognize that name, to present to us about teaching AP Chemistry based on the most recent revisions to the CED. Anthony is a Knowles Teaching Fellow, and he teaches at Belleville High School in Michigan. And he's an active member of multiple AP Chemistry communities, and we're just thrilled to have him here with us today.
All right. Thank you, Kristin. So yes, I am, I hate to say the cliche, like I'm excited to be here, but this is my first presentation of the summer as well. And I got to give it to all of you. I've been trying to relax in the summer. So thank you all for being here and getting us started. My email is here on the front if anybody wants to save it for later, or if you want to continue conversations, but you'll see that again at the end of the presentation. So just if you saw the little blurb of the purpose of this session, I'm gearing this towards trying to share how I teach AP Chemistry, just sharing and seeing how people could do AP Chemistry, and just share some of the resources that I have. And then I'm hoping if there's time at the end, there could be questions or thoughts or ideas to kind of organize yourself for AP Chemistry. Just a little bit of context, as Kristin said, I recently just got married. So that is my husband and our two dogs. One of them is right below us right now. Her name is Ruthenium, yes, named him after an element. And our first dog is Osmium, another element. Those are some of my favorite elements. So just a little context about me. If you may have seen or heard my name before, it was formerly Tidaldi. So it is fun trying to build a new teacher identity with a new last name. So just a little bit of my context. So, like I always think it's important to start like, how is he teaching the way he's teaching with where he's from? So I teach in a public Michigan high school. So we have about 2,000 students. The prerequisite for my class is not much. I tried to strip everything, and we could talk about the why later, but the only prerequisite for my class that I've made is just biology. And that means you could start my class as a sophomore, you can't start it as a freshman. That was the only thing that I had to negotiate with admin. And so this is why I have kind of summer work to kind of level the knowledge. I have a typical like traditional schedule. So like I see students every day about an hour. I don't even want to get to the 58 minutes thing because that's logistical. My classroom has become entirely flipped. And so if you're not familiar with what flipped is, I have students watch lectures and take notes at home, and then we use class for review. And a lot of that happens through Google Classroom. My class is also set up that I do a lot more short quizzes and less big tests to kind of save me time. And then as we get closer to the day, I have Saturday review sessions. Hopefully you all have access to this slideshow. I see some of you are in here. This slideshow is hyperlinked. So there are many documents and resources found within here that I'll reference that you could open, use, ask questions about. And that's just kind of my purpose here this afternoon or this morning in North Korea or South Korea, sorry. So I have a lot of hyperlinked documents here. The first resource I'd like to share is if you want to be an AP Chemistry teacher, you have to submit a syllabus. And so sometimes it's always hard to find templates or like examples. So here is an example of my syllabus if you would like to check it out. It has been approved till, I don't know, like 20 so years, whatever it is. I used a template that I had found from my APSI. Next thing is another reference, because a big question that shows up in the communities is like, what textbook do you use? I use the TRO textbook as a resource. It's not my first place. Like I don't teach through the textbook. It's kind of like if students need an extra resource or if they need supplemental examples, I use TRO. I think it's a great book. The language and the way that things are organized is great. And so sometimes I use it to assign exercises, like I said, and students have access to it over the summer for their summer work. That's why I pulled a lot of my notes and exercises. So if you need a suggestion for a textbook, I'm not paid by TRO, but I think his textbooks are great. So then here is now the breakdown of AP Chemistry. So if you are or are not familiar with it, I always love this and I show this to students. There's the exam weighting, and then there's 9 units that we kind of are required to get through as far as content. Today, I'm going to focus on an example lesson in Unit 3. So you'll see we'll be doing intermolecular forces and properties. And another reason why I'm doing that is because it's one of the largest, it's actually the largest weight. And that's something that I have my students commit to memory in the beginning of the year. Like, why is Unit 3 important? Because it shows up the most on the AP exam, and it does. And sometimes they're quick questions, or sometimes they're very thoughtful questions. So this is the breakdown. And here's another hyperlink. If anybody needs the CED, the course and exam description, this is a hyperlink right here that shows the entire course and exam description. It goes through, it has example lessons, example ideas and the topics that you are required to teach. Here's an example of, my next couple of slides have an example of what is in there. This is Unit 3. There are 13 topics in Unit 3 that we're required to get through. They give you a suggestion that it could be about 14 to 15 class period, and they remind you of the weighting at the top there. A little bit more into the CED, they always have like these unit guides, and so they have an example of the objective and the knowledge that is required, and they also have some suggested demos and lessons. So here's an example on the first like set of pages in the Unit 3. You see the unit at a glance, and then you have like sample activities that you could do. So sometimes it's gratifying or validating. It's like, oh, I do that. Or if it's like, oh, I never thought of doing that. And it kind of gives teachers an idea of what you could do in that unit. Another big thing that I love, and I've used this to make notes and questions, they go really deep into the enduring understanding, learning objective, and essential knowledge in the CED. And I use this as a very important reference to either make my notes or just kind of give myself like a, yep, I did that. Or even the vocabulary that's required. Like, for example, a big vocabulary word that is like a must when it comes to intermolecular forces, and specifically London dispersion forces, is polarizability. And so you'll see that later. And so I get that from the essential knowledge, and I use that to kind of make my notes. And so here's just like a zoomed in if you can't see it from afar, right? And it's just a way for me, like I said, to just be like, oh, I have to make sure that I go over London and dipole and ion dipole and all the different types of intermolecular forces. This is just a crash example. Here's another hyperlinked that if you want to check it out. Here's my pacing for the entire year, broken down by days and weeks. This is how I lesson plan each week, and it's a live Google Doc, and you can see that here. Sometimes I might have a little bit of a cray admin, and I don't know if anybody has ever experienced an administrator who is a little cray. No, never, right? But sometimes I have admin that checks to see my learning objectives and see if it matches what's on my board, and then checks to see if it like is going on in my classroom. And that's kind of our administration has been big on collecting data and seeing teachers being consistent with things. Nothing kind of punishable, but more like conversations. So like if you have admin that has objectives, or if you have like school objectives or school goals, this is just an example of where this is seen. And sometimes this document is hyperlinked. And so if I share it with other teachers, they could see the documents that I use. I like to share this with beginning or teachers who want some support or help to see kind of how I pace each day, how long each unit takes me. So teachers could see day by day how I was teaching AP Chemistry. And so today's little sample lesson is going to be that Wednesday, November 30th. I'm going to have like a little notes quiz, and I'll explain what that is later, and we'll do some example problems with that learning objective. So giving us a moment to get ready, I'm just going to kind of go through a sample daily lesson, right? The big purpose of today's session is just to share an example of how I teach AP Chemistry, just to get you thinking. Maybe you steal some things, maybe you suggest some things, kind of like working together here. Just a little bit of context for this lesson, just things you have to assume. Big picture, let's assume that students just finished Unit 2. They completed like a short quiz on some end of Unit 2 topics. They completed a progress check, and I could explain more what that means later. And I've offered in-class and personal feedback to students on how they've done on the progress check and the quiz. And then little pictures zooming in on the day. We could also assume that students had been assigned like about 2 or 3 lectures the week or 2 prior. They were required to watch and record notes up until this lesson. And they just watched a lecture that I created on London dispersion forces and dipole-dipole forces after watching a lesson on kinetic molecular theory and intermolecular forces. So here's how I start class. I have like a design slide for each unit. So this is my Unit 3 slides. When students walk in, I just have like an example agenda, upcoming assignments. So they kind of see like, what are we doing today? I also do this for administrative purposes because sometimes you get observed. I've added in the middle of this slide later on in the year, like the learning objective, because that became a focus of my school. So I don't know if anybody else has administration that wants to see learning objectives, but that's kind of like where I put, and I just copy and paste learning objectives from the CED. And then I use exclusively Google Classroom for everything. I don't know if anybody else uses Google Classroom, but that's where all my lectures and assignments are. I've kind of moved away from collecting papers, and I've had students turn in things either with images or typing. It has saved me like from having to carry papers home or from losing anything. So if you have any type of other LMS, like I know Canvas is another one, highly suggest so you kind of keep everything centralized. And I kind of remind students like, oh, here's what you were supposed to have done for today, and here's upcoming assignments, just an example. And then here's the next thing that if you all could open, it should, I'm going to probably try and see if I could throw it in the chat if Kristin doesn't. But here's an example of just like a quick formative assessment that I've given students to kind of, oh wait, here it is. I'm going to just throw it in the chat here. If you all want to look at it, you should have access to it, but if not, you could let me know. I have these things known as like entrance tasks, or maybe just like formative questions that connect with the lectures and notes. And so for those of you who are iffy or not familiar with or not a fan of flipped classrooms or like how to hold students accountable, here's something that I do. I'll have students watch lectures, and then the next day or the day when I want them to have the lecture prepared, I'll have a set of questions, maybe multiple choice, maybe short answer. And sometimes I'll do it in a Google form that automatically shows up in the Google Classroom. Sometimes it'll be something that they do on paper that they do upload to Google Classroom, or I share answer key. And so here's an example if you want to check it out. I have like, I think 12 or 13 questions, and I usually make it like just silent work time, and students are able to use my notes. And so speaking of notes, here's the next thing. Oops, I don't want to click on that. Boop. I went away. Here we go. Here's the next thing is an example of my Unit 3 notes, which are hyperlinked in this slideshow again. So I would suggest, and the image is taking a moment to load, but I have like unit notes for every unit that I've created. And I also have lectures on various different parts of that. And I will share that at the end of today's session, or it's on the last slide here for today. But I've kind of had it broken down, and I have students kind of chunking this entire unit packet into small chunks to prepare for the lessons each day. So I don't have them watch like an entire unit of lectures and then they come to class. I chunk it. And kind of a way to hold them accountable is they are able to use the notes to answer these questions in class, and then they feel like they have a good time because they're able to answer the questions quickly. For students who do not do the notes, they either get an idea of what they're required to know, and eventually, depending on like how I'm seeing people interact, I might have them pair up with somebody who has done it, and then they kind of work together. Sometimes there's like friend groups, or sometimes I've like done it where like in college, you have like study groups and one person's responsible for the chapter. I've kind of sometimes modeled that in AP chemistry, where if you have like a study group, or I have students sitting in tables, maybe somebody has been responsible for that notes and they kind of share and kind of reteach it, and they take turns doing that. So this is a hyperlink copy of my Unit 3 notes if you want to check it out. If you want to look between pages 1 to 5, that's where I kind of say, okay, you're going to use pages 1 to 5 to answer those questions. And I'm trying to give people a chance, if you want to open it, to look. And then a little plug as you're opening and looking, something that I use, that I live by. One of the things is a random plug. I don't know if anybody's familiar with Symbol Salad, but Symbol Salad is just a quick website that automatically will make symbols, superscripts, and subscripts. So, or even look, it has like compounds there or Greek symbols. If you've ever been like, dang, how do I get a subscript in Google Forms? Or like, oh my goodness, like I can't get a subscript or a superscript or the degree symbol or the delta symbol in a certain platform. Symbol Salad will put it anywhere. And so I love, and you'll see that the Google form has like the subscripts or the symbols, and you'll see that later in another app that I use. So just a random another thing that I'm sharing, a plug here. Symbol Salad is great. Now, let's say I've given students a chance to do that entrance task. They've answered those questions. The next slide, what I usually do is I will have the data in real time in Google form, and I'll look for like the most missed questions. And so I'll go, oh, okay, they've all messed up on this question, question 10, and I'll screenshot it and put it in my slideshow in real time. I have like my work computer that they've given us, and then I have my personal computer kind of in my classroom, and that kind of helps me. But you could do that with one computer. It's fine, doesn't make a big difference. And so I'll have a conversation with students. I'll be like, here's our most missed question. What do we think? And this is like giving live feedback in real time, which is another thing my admin kind of pushes for or looks for as well. And so I'll be like, why do you think most of us were kind of split between these two questions? And sometimes it could just be the question, right? So they were like, oh, you know, like state of matter could tell me if intermolecular forces are at work here. Like if something's a solid versus a gas, like I could tell if it has a stronger or weaker London dispersion force, and they're not wrong. And so we have just a quick conversation about that. This is a formative question, and just it lowers the stress about having to make the perfect question. Your formative questions don't have to be perfect, right? And when you make a question, you have a way of looking at it, and your students have another way. And then sometimes I have students give me an idea of how to change the question for the previous or the following year. But then I also could see, you could see right here, I have one student who chose type of element and dipole moment, and I have that data in my Google form. This student clearly doesn't have a clue. I might need to check with them later, or they are the one that severely didn't do the work and they don't know what's going on. And I might have to just like, maybe make sure I float and make sure they're doing well for the next time. Or I'll know maybe they were absent for a plethora of days and that's why they're off. And so then what I'll do with this is, if I start class with some questions, then I'll do like a quick little, I don't want to even say reteach. I just have slides that have some content and they kind of connect with their notes. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time going over these slides, but these have a lot because they're in Unit 3. Later on, there'll be less in the pages. But I'll share just some things here and you have access to this. I'll go over some things. Oh, you were all fine with these questions. Here are the types of intermolecular forces, blah, blah, blah. Oh, London, remember that was the question that we kind of messed up. I might stress a little bit more here. And then I'll stress more on these slides because of that question that was kind of like 50-50. So this is just an example of just being responsive and giving feedback in real time. That's not like breaking the bank here. And then I'll go over it. I'll explain like, oh, here were the two things that I was hoping that you would notice, like the polarizability or the size of the electron cloud. And we could use molar mass to help us, but never explain that as a molar mass. It just, if it has a larger molar mass, it'll have a larger electron cloud and it'll probably be more polarizable, stronger intermolecular force with London dispersion and blah, blah, blah. Then I could also, I got that here and they could check that in their notes. Sometimes I'll have students circle, highlight. Also for the student, that one student who got that question completely wrong, this could be their time to kind of just like circle, highlight, check, and just get with it. Because I know the biggest pushback I get from flipped classroom is like, what do you do if students don't do the work? Here's a way to kind of meet in the middle. you have like students will also have access to my slides. They have access to my lectures. They could try and get caught up in real time here. And then I'll go over that. I'll go to the other thing. This is just like the size of the electron cloud. And then I'll do an example. I'll have more examples. And then I just go back to, all right, now that you've had a chance to do it on your own, I've tried to re-explain it. Let's just do some questions. And so these questions are found in their notes. I forget what page it's on. It might be 3 or 4 if you have it open. And then I give them a chance to kind of revisit, answer the question. So it's kind of like pen to paper. So it's not all digital. And then I'll go over the answers. I tell them to turn it in on Google Classroom as a way to hold them accountable. And then here's my next plug, right? So here's my second plug. I'm not a paid spokesperson for Slido, and I might pronounce it wrong. But if anybody has ever heard of Slido before, and I might pronounce it Slido, it is an amazing extension in Google Slides. It is another way to get like live, real-time feedback with questions from students. And I would like, for those of us who are here today, I have a Slido in this slideshow. You'll see it's very intuitive how to join and answer questions. I would like it if I could have a couple of people join. You could put aliases. I don't need real names, but it would help the presentation. I'll join too if people are afraid. But it's a really quick and easy extension in Google Slides, and it's a way for students to interact quickly. And my students love this. I don't know why. They love Slido so much. They get competitive in a fun way. They get answers in real time. They get that instant gratification. So this is another way to ask and check understanding. So I'm going to give people a moment. Here's what it will look like. And sometimes I start class with it. Here's like the first Slido thing here. It has a QR code if you allow students to use their phone. My school is 1-to-1, so I suggest they join with their Chromebooks at slido.com. And if they just put in that code, they're automatically in our Slido. I'm going to join. Perfect. Yes, I got people in here. Oh, thank you. All right. And don't worry about getting it right or wrong. Maybe if you get it wrong, you're going to help the presentation. So I could be like, what would I do if a student actually got this wrong? I'm going to pretend to join, right? So I'm in there now. So if you didn't join at this moment, don't worry, because the join thing is on every single slide. So I'm going to go to the first question and you're going to see it. It automatically moves the questions with students. So you don't have to worry about like catching up. And I also have this as like a quiz. That's just like the option. So it times each question. That's why I love this so much, because timing is an important aspect of the AP exam, and students should be trying to answer questions in 90 seconds or less. And so I kind of start them a little bit tougher in these Slido. So here's the first question, right? Like we just went over. I have this question. Either I'll read it or I give people a chance to read it. I'll pipe down if you want to try and answer it. And you can see there's a timer. You could also see that there's a number at the top. It says 11 of 13, right? So 13 people in this chat are present. And when it says 13 out of 13, like I can move on. I also see that there are 20 participants. So I could also be like, oh, I'm waiting for 7 people. I'm not going to do that to you, but I would do that to my students, right? If I know I have 26 students in the class, I need that number to be 26. And so that's how you kind of get all in. Or I could be like, what's going on? Oh, your internet's not working. No problem. And so boom, I'd be like, all right, what's the correct answer? All right. Correct answer is intermolecular forces. And we could have like a quick question, like conversation about the difference between inter and intramolecular, which is a big misconception that happens in the AP exam. That's why I asked this question, right? And so, it'll give me like, oh, look, Kristin, great job. Mr. Chem, great job. Top 5 here. And going on. I could just have us asking more, right? And then I ask another question. I might kind of breeze through these, right? Then I have another question to give people a chance. Let me see, as that's going in. Yeah, Slido is definitely similar to Pear Deck, but the only difference is there's more steps in Pear Deck. Like I'd have to make a separate slideshow and then like it feels like it's more steps with Pear Deck than Slido. That's why I love Slido. I've definitely used both to kind of, because Pear Deck actually has students able to like draw and do things, which I like depending on the lesson. So like if I have them drawing Lewis structures, I might use a Pear Deck. But if I'm having them do multiple choice questions and I could quickly make this like during my prep or maybe 10 minutes before class, I love Slido. Slido is quick and easy. So that's my pro of Slido over Pear Deck, is like the time it takes. Oh, wonderful. We all got this. We understand the difference between intra break. Great. Oh, look, our board has changed. Lindsay, you're in first, right? Whatever. So that's just like an example. And then I'll have like another little bit more of a deeper question. And sometimes these questions I pull directly from their notes. So it seems simple and silly to re-ask the same questions, but no. Remember, we have high school students. High school students love getting answers right and love when there's like that low stress of like, I know I have the right answer. And so that's how you kind of could just like random parts of AP chemistry have like more participation when students know they're going to get an answer right. It doesn't happen all the time, but like I'll pull questions from the notes. It'll motivate them to watch the lectures and they'll know that they'll see those questions again, and I'll put them in my Slido. And then sometimes I'll be like, oh, this is on page 4. If we're all like, find somebody who has the answer on page 4. Sometimes I'll do like a competition with like random candy if I need to wake them up, if I feel like they're sleeping at 7 in the morning. Because yes, my AP chemistry is first hour, which is at 7 in the morning. So it's rough. All right, so I'll go, the correct answer is on dispersion. I see somebody chose dipole, and I might have a conversation there. Right, keeping it going. Oh, the board is stayed strong. I think I have like 3 more questions so you could see. Look, there's subscripts here. Another reason why I'm showing that. And you see how it's a sample question? That was a question that's pulled directly from my notes. There's subscripts here. The subscripts I stole from Symbol Salad. Otherwise, you can't really get subscripts in Slido. And if anybody wants to talk more about how to do Slido, we could continue conversations later. You'll have my email, and I'll share my Facebook information if you're like, oh, I want to know more about this. Because this is just, I only get 45 minutes, so this will be like a crash kind of preview, and maybe you'll like things, maybe you don't like things. This is more kind of an AP style question now. Do you see, like, as I get more towards the end of this, now I'm asking more critical thinking questions, or questions that I've revamped or stolen from AP chemistry. I go, oh, wonderful. We all know that I choose the correct answer. Oh, you're so good, right? And then I'll ask this question. And this is where like I've adopted the question. It's not a trick. Right, so I'm just giving you all a chance to play with Slido, or Slido, as I say sometimes. If you have this Slido or Slido app in front of you, you could also see there's like a question and answer thing. Like you could have people comment or speak. And I'm going to just post something there with my old name. That's sometimes a back channel that I will keep open to make sure that it's appropriate. Sometimes it's not appropriate for some classes, but sometimes my AP Chem classes will be like, it's on page 4. Like they'll like help each other out, and it's just fun because it's such a low risk thing. This is just formative questions to check understanding. Correct answer is still I2. It has the strongest intramolecular forces. We answered that previously, so it should have the higher boiling point, kind of like, and I will have students be like, no, it can't be the same answer twice. So I'm glad somebody else chose F2. And then I usually maybe get towards the end of class where I start asking some review questions, getting them ready for the next part of this. And I'll remind them like, oh, here's a unit 2 review, right? Oh, what about this question? Which molecule is polar? Because we learned about polarity in the middle of unit 2 and had to learn it with our molecules. It's going to come back again in unit 3. So this is just another way to keep students like on track and remembering. I don't even know if my hint is correct here. I don't. No, it's right. Okay. I'm gonna have us move forward with the Slido or Slido. I think we get the idea here, but like this is just another way for me to ask like check-in questions or check-out questions, and I think that's it for these. That's it, right? Cool. Oh my goodness, good job. And look, it even tells you, this is why I love this. It says the hardest question was when water boils, which of the following is true. I usually save that, or like I'll make sure to ask it again the next day. That's another reason why I love Slido, because it gives me that like feedback in real time that I could share with students. I might even put it on a quiz again. Okay. All right. And then I'll usually end class to be like, don't forget that you have homework and da da da. And I always like to kind of screenshot like my Google Classroom to be like, oh, don't forget, here are these things here. I posted these things, da 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 da, because students need that organization. So we just did like a quick little sample lesson. I want to just like take 5 minutes here. Do we have any questions so far before I get towards the end of this presentation where I talk about assessments and share resources? Any questions so far? You could feel free to use the chat or unmute. I'll do like a wait time. All right.
Oh, that's it.
Yeah. I love that you ask that, because that has been a question with the people from Slido. You are able to share the questions because students have access to the slideshow. I think it's Don acts like a rubber. I had moved through this Slido because I don't think anyone was interacting, so I just moved forward. That's why it was locked out. But anyways, yeah, students have access to the questions. When I share my slideshow, they could see the question, but also there's a way for you to access and screenshot the questions and choices. And I usually either put them in a document or I put them in Google Classroom for students to see. But so there are different ways for students to be able to see the questions. Absolutely. And then sometimes I'll re-ask those questions too. So through the Slido website, you're able to access the questions. It is very easy to add questions, but yes, that's why I prefer it over Pear Deck, because all you got to do is open up Slideshow, click on the Slido extension, and then just add questions. And I could show that maybe at the end of the session if anybody wants to hang around, and I could show that part by part. Great questions. Other questions? Every day, to save myself time, because we have such a limited time in the classroom, I don't really lecture in class, especially when class is at 7 in the morning. So I don't directly teach in class. I'll only directly teach if I feel like students are really struggling on things and I'll have to kind of do it live. But it's not an everyday thing. It's only like a responsive thing. I think there's a way. Somebody asked about sharing my Slidos. There should be a way. I think they just updated Slido that I could share my questions with you. But I'm still, I mean, not that I'm not a paid spokesperson for Slido, but I have been working with them trying to create like a teacher Slido. Because they know how much I love it. So they like reached out to me. So they've been trying to enhance it and update it. So I think kind of like AP Classroom, there's a way for me to share. Otherwise, I could show at the end of this session how to make the questions. All right, I'm going to move on to the next thing, which is assessments. And here is just a summative assessment and how I grade. Here is an example of a quiz that showed up in this unit. You all have access to a hyperlink of it, I believe, on slide 45. I think that's what I did. Yep, that first image there, if you want to check it out. But It's kind of short, but can be long, and you'll see what I mean by that. So here are the first two questions. I've ripped them or adopted them from prior AP exams that you have access to, ones that are not secure, like 2016, 2017, like things that you're allowed to use, but you're also using it in class, so it's fine. And then here are the next set of questions. So I have two free response questions to start, and then I have like random multiple choice questions that I've found on AP Classroom. They could be topic questions, they could be progress check questions that I've revamped, questions that I've found on the internet. And this is like the bare minimum. And then I have something called, and this is what gets different, I have something called help. And so then I have a section in this quiz that looks like it's really long. Students aren't required to answer the help, but they are very motivated to do it. I have something in my quizzes called help, which are questions from previous units that were most missed and adapted and updated. And so for students who did poorly on those questions on previous quizzes, they study along with the new content, which is great cumulative right there. And then they try and make sure that they earn some points back with this help. I don't really consider it extra credit, it's credit recovery. And I'll talk more about that on my next slide. So I have like Lewis structure help, which is in unit 2, composition of mixture help, unit 1, periodic trends help, unit 1, properties of covalent bonds help, unit 2. And so here's my kind of little breakdown here. I always have more questions than are needed to score. Why? You don't need 100% to get a 5 on the AP exam. So it kind of helps students learn how to cut their losses, right? Like if they're like, I have no idea how to answer this question, I'm going to try and focus on questions I can answer and go back. And then if it's a multiple choice question, they're like, oh, I'm spending way too long, I'm going to select something and then go on to a question I know. It's a hard mindset shift because students are so like simplistic where they're like, I got to do beginning, middle, end. The help is a way for students to show what they are learning or remembering from previous units. And they earn a bank of points that they could use to drop missing assignments. So let's say they missed a lecture and it's like simple and stupid and informative, which is such a small portion of the grade. But like they have parents or guardians who are on them about missing assignments and it's like too late. They could use that to drop it, or it could lift lower grades, right? So if they bombed the quiz on Lewis structures and then they do well on the recovery and the help, they could add those points back. Fair game, because they're showing that mastery. And it's a way for me to save time and continue on. And then the grading, I could grade as harsh as I want without feeling guilty or without trying to do like what a table read would be and be like, oh, should we give them the point? I could be like, no point, right? Because if I think that it's not ideal or great for this quiz, I could be harsh because they have a plethora of other points that they could earn, and students often will focus on that. And then my scores, I wouldn't really say it's like curving. The way that I grade is I'll do like the total points that they could earn on this quiz over the mode. So like if most students are getting 12 or 15, I'll make that the total. And let's say they could earn up to 25 points, right? And so then I'll have a score of 25 over 15 or something like that. I think mode, and I've spoken with some math teachers, mode is a better representation of the data than average, right? Like what scores are students mostly getting? Because sometimes you have students who are absent and that messes the average, or you have like people who just space out, whatever. For the quiz, I've used AP Classroom, right? So, and I'll show that on like in my resources as I end this presentation here, but I love to use AP Classroom or other documents that I've saved to pull from. Sometimes I'll pull it directly from the notes. Yes, and so I do this instead of test corrections. I have not, and my school requires that we offer a retake, but only at the student's request. My students don't request retakes because they focus on getting the help. I've definitely had situations where my students are not getting the help, and that's like maybe like 1 or 2 students who are struggling to manage. And so I'll do like exceptions for them where they can do corrections or they can do a retake, be responsive to your students. But here's my why here. It saves time. It helps without that gotcha moment. It helps students adjust to the AP mindset. It boosts morale. right? Because I have students who are like, oh my goodness, for the love of me, I could not remember equilibrium right now, but I do remember how to draw Lewis structures. I'm going to hang on to that for dear life. And it placates the grade grubbers. I don't know if any of you have students who are like, I want to get my points or da-da-da-da-da. I don't have to worry about that because students are like focusing on getting the help and using it. And if they like miss 1 point somewhere, they're not worrying about trying to retake. They're using the help points to get that 1 point, which is just, pedantic. Here's the end of our session. Now I'd like to share some resources. These are hyperlinked. The first image here is a document that I made at the end of the pandemic, like I think 2020, 2021. It has my answered notes, my Google Doc notes, and all of my videos that go along in the different parts. And I kind of put that in one document to help people find things instead of having to search through things. Another document I made in the pandemic was there were like these videos that were made to go over all of the topics, and I made documents that go with those. So if you want to check out this. Also, if you're not familiar with the progress check, AP Classroom offers these things known as progress checks, which are just multiple choice and free response questions at the end of every unit. And they're only in AP Classroom. And I spent the time to make Google Docs of all of them. Of course, another amazing resource is AP Classroom. That's where I get most of my questions, or if I need to come up with a quick question, I'll do that in AP Classroom. And I did make like a quick little video here of like going through AP Classroom. There's no sound. So like, here's like the filter in AP Classroom where you could go through, you could say like, oh, I want this unit. And then I want this type of question. And I want that, and like you tell it what type of questions you want, and it will automatically populate those type of questions. So if you're not using AP Classroom, make sure, I would suggest you are. And you could, and now they've opened it up, they made it pretty, you could share it with other teachers. I'll definitely answer these questions in the chat at the end here, as we're getting to the end. I think I'm on my like last slide. I'm gonna go to the next slide. All right. Last thing I'll suggest is communities to join. I just became a group expert in AP chemistry teachers, which was like the highlight of my life. So I am always in AP chemistry teachers. Don't be afraid to ask questions or answer questions. I love doing both just to be there. There's also AP Teach, which both Kristin and I are a part of. It's another Facebook group that we have created that you could be a part of. And then that's it. There were questions here. If you want to stick around and get these questions answered, please do. Here's my email and there's my Facebook. If I don't get a chance to answer your questions or you think of something, reach out via email or just find me on Facebook, friend request, or message me. I had a question about scoring. So somebody said, students earn 30 points, mode is 15. What is entered in the grade book? My grade book would be 15, right? They cannot get over 100, and they have like 15 points that they could use towards either missing assignments or as a bank that they could use, and they keep track of, because it's on like their it's on their quiz that they keep. They have to like forfeit the quiz and be like, oh, I'd like to use some of these help points on this quiz. And it kind of lowers the pressure a bit. It's rare that students earn like all one. I mean, like there are like maybe 1 or 2 students that are like the high flyers that get the 4 and 5 that will get all those points. And it's just a good indicator of like, who's my 4 and 5, but it hasn't been anything detrimental of things that are just like horrendous in my classroom and my grading. There are not inflated grades because there's more questions on those quizzes. So it's kind of a fair game. How many points do you give as the help points per assessment? That just depends, because I make new quizzes each time, or like I'll update them. And so I don't worry about having a certain set of questions. I'll just be like, oh, like I'll use the scoring guidelines from AP Classroom to be like, oh, this is a point, this is a point. Multiple choice questions are a point. And then the help are the same scoring guidelines. And then whatever the total is, that's my total. And then whatever mode that I'm seeing as the grades that are coming in that I'm grading, I make that the total that goes in my grade book. I do have honors, but I don't require that they have honors for AP. I definitely have students taking AP as their first course. Actually, this year, I think 90% of my students are sophomores, which is taking AP chemistry as their first course. It's totally doable because of the summer work, so it kind of levels the playing field. Somebody asked about if I give tests. I do give tests, but there's like, I give 2 cumulative tests. So like at the end of first semester, I'll give like a mock AP exam for the units that we've learned. And at the end of like getting closer to the AP exam, I'll give like another mock cumulative exam on all the units we've learned. So I'll only do that like once or twice in the year. But I am able to save time by doing these smaller chunks of quizzes. Based on the assessment you create and use the resources, will it reflect the actual AP? It actually does. For my quizzes, for those students who are getting always more than the bare minimum, they end up getting the 3, 4, and 5. For the students who are getting just the minimum or below that minimum, those are the ones that end up getting 1s and 2s, or I have to do a little bit of more of like intervention with them. And I suggest they come to more review, or I suggest they come see me for review. So it has definitely, I just got my scores back, like most of us, if you have taught AP chemistry, and it lines up pretty nicely because my quizzes are AP style and exam questions. Whew. I tried to answer all those questions. If you have more, let me know. I know I'm over the time, of course I am. So sorry, Kristin.
Oh, no, I scheduled an hour.
Oh, I thought it was 45 minutes. Okay.
Well, normally I will say, let's do 45 minutes, and that gives us time to talk and ask questions, because there are always questions, and sometimes those conversations are really important.
Yes. Okay. I'm so glad you did that then. Well, I'm here. If anybody has questions, if anybody wants to see anything, any more questions about the way that I grade. It's more, I've been doing that great, labs, yes. So yes, I do like doing labs. I try and hit like very popular labs. You're very welcome. Thank you for coming. I try and hit very popular labs like titration, anything with calorimetry. I like to do composition of mixture or a hydrate lab. I like to try and, oh no, that's, I'll check out the hyperlinks and see if they're working. But I like to try and do labs that I know I've seen on AP exams. And I don't worry about the number, I just worry about the type. I do end up doing maybe, I want to say 9 or 10, maybe more, like intense labs. And then we'll do like maybe 2 or 3 kind of smaller lab activity likes that are not like intense labs. Like for example, with this intermolecular forces thing, I'll like squirt acetone and water on their desk, and then they'll wipe it with like their finger, and then they'll see like, and they'll experience like the differences in how water is evaporating versus the acetone. And we'll talk about intermolecular forces. And then of course I have them wash their hands. So that's kind of like a quick little lab activity that they answer questions about. Another lab activity is like, I'll have them make solutions when we get to unit 3 in the solutions part. I'll have them make a certain molar of solution and give me the procedure and use the glassware. And I wouldn't consider that like my 9 or 10 intense labs, but I consider it like a lab activity to get them doing things that I know show up on the AP exam. The hyperlinks work on my end. If you're still here and you're saying the hyperlinks don't work, please let me know. I do go in CED order. There is one weird topic in unit, and Kristin, I'm sure you know, that shows up in unit 7.14. It's like on like entropy or Gibbs free energy, and that shows up in unit 9. So that's the only time I'm like, that was just like in the rewrite, they forgot about it, and I'll mention it. But that's the only topic, 7.14, which is like the Gibbs free energy of solutions. I'll save that for unit 9. But otherwise, I go in complete order, and it is super helpful for 2 major reasons. There are a lot of teachers who go in whatever order, and that's whatever's comfortable for you. That's great. But here's why I suggest CED order. If everyone goes in CED order, or most people do, the conversations that happen on AP chemistry Facebook groups are the same time. So like, so if somebody's asking a question about an equilibrium question, I probably have done it the week before or will be doing it next week. That just makes conversations so nice, and I don't have to like dig. And the way questions are asked on the AP exam and AP classroom kind of benefit you if you do go in CED order. Because like a question that you ask in unit 5 will ask or require things from units 1 through 4. And that just helps kind of like with this cumulative knowledge. So I go in CED order. I find it easier. Also, I was like in the beginning of my teaching career ish, right? Like I wasn't comfortable or I didn't like my curriculum. So when this new CED rolled out, I was like, let me try it. And I started from scratch and I love it. So, I wonder, might be the sharing. You're right. Let me see if it's that. Because I shared my slideshow. It might be those specific documents. Yeah. I'll have to go back and open up settings. I think the reason why that's happening is because a couple of years ago, I had shared my folder. And then somebody had accidentally changed or deleted my documents. And so that was I get paranoid with sharing. On my end, it says anyone with the link can view. So it might be like a internet or refreshing. Page 49 is a screenshot. Ooh, these 3 screenshots should have hyperlinks. Each screenshot on slide 49 has hyperlinks. So let me just go to slide 49. I'll go back a couple of slides. Yeah, they come in as bubbles on the bottoms, but like in my presentation, like let's say I'm going to click on this one. It opens up and you should be able to see my screen. Here is the document. So you could click on the image, or if you're in like presenter view, or if you're not in presenter view and you just like see it in front of you, if you click on the image, there's like a little thing that pops up in the bottom. Let me see if I could just show you that. Let me see. I'm going to escape.
I see it. Thank you.
Oh, perfect. Okay, cool. Any other questions? And there are no silly or redundant questions. This helps me in my teaching, right? This is just like, do I know what I'm doing? And getting these questions just like, yeah, I'm able to justify, I'm able to share. So there are no annoying questions or repetitive questions. Please feel free to ask anything. You also have my information. I'll put that back up if you want to reach out. I'm going to go back to my last slide. If you're a little shy and asking a question, there's my email. And then you could find me on Facebook. Of course. Thank you for coming. Can you share with us some of your... Ray, I could definitely do that. Can you email me if you want to get other resources of mine? Because I like to share it on like a person-to-person basis. Yes, thank you all for coming. This has been like my first presentation of the summer. So thank you for kicking it off.
Anthony, so happy you could come with us today and present.
Of course. Students do get the answers to the Google form after they submit because it's formative. And so they could see how many they get right. It goes into their email and then they could keep track of those questions for later. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Kristin, for having me.
Oh, so happy that you were able to kick off the summer PD series this year.
I'm so excited. Hopefully I've got people thinking, hopefully.
I think so, definitely.
That's great.
All right.
Yeah.
I think it's been a great session and I'm so glad everyone could come. And NEACT was really happy to host this. And if you are able to join NEACT, it helps us continue providing these sessions for people. And that really helps us help each other. So that's great.
Yes, it's great that you host this. When is the next session?
Our next session is the next one that I know of is August 3rd. I'm going to be talking, Sarah English and I are going to do a presentation about using Java Lab simulations.
Ooh.
Not everyone knows about those. And we have another We have 2 more sessions in the works, but I don't have dates finalized for them yet.
Okay. And let me know if you ever want me to share or present, or if you see that there are threads that are coming up and people want more things, like I'd love to continue to contribute.
We would love to have you. And, you know, we're all, if other people who are here have things you'd like to share, we can make arrangements. My term as NEAC president is coming to an end, but I'm still very involved with the organization, and we can still continue to run PD sessions. We run PD sessions all year long, a lot of them in person, but also we've had a number of online sessions as well.
It's so great that you can do that.
All right.
I clicked on it.
That's great. I'm going to stop the recording now.
Okay.